Hi, I'm Nyesha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
Good morning and welcome to the challenge. As always, first and foremost, I want to thank God for the opportunity and thank you, the viewers, for tuning in. I can't tell you how excited I am this morning to have my guest, a dear friend of mine, someone who I've known and respected and grown to love over a whole bunch of years. Somebody who writes for a living and actually is a part of the system that is responsible for educating our folk and folks who are interested in higher education. I can't say any more, but I will say I am glad to have this morning with me Frank Harris III. Good morning, Frank.
Good morning, Russell. Thank you. You're talking about me?
I am talking to you, man. I know. I haven't seen you in so long, man. Yeah. I had to reach out and touch you, man, because I haven't seen you. Frank, this morning I'm so really filled with questions and thoughts and emotions about seeing you and all of the things that's transpired, if you will, over the last couple of months. I almost don't know where to begin.
All right.
But let me say this. I've known you for a lot of years, and I've read a lot of the stuff that you've written, and I think the overarching theme in most cases is how people view black people, if you will,
yes,
and how black people view each other.
Right.
And I am, I think, as I believe you are, based upon what I've read, in the writings that you have, feel like that's a very tender subject, and it's just not discussed openly enough. And that we ought to be talking more about that if we're really going to deal with the issues that we have to deal with in our society honestly.
Right.
And I do not think that there's anybody from where I'm sitting that feels more that that's the case and spends more time delving into those matters than you.
Well, I guess for better or worse, I do my column for The Current, I do tend to write about the issues that I see going on and that are affecting black people and all people for that matter. It's just something that I feel a passion about, and usually when I write about a topic, it's something that I feel from the heart and I think about it and then I decide to write about it. So it's something that I've done, and I think it's important that people write about what's going on and as well as offer up some suggestions and on how to make things better.
It comes across that way too, extremely well.
Thank you.
And quite frankly, the points are so poignant sometimes that I think people are a little intimidated by them.
Well, intimidated or sometimes infuriated. It's,
okay, I'll accept that.
But one of the things that I understand in writing any story is that there are always going to be people who are going to maybe love what you're doing, hate what you're doing, and maybe be indifferent. Sure. I'd rather have them have some type of feeling than no kind of feeling on it. But I try to make sure that when I write something, I'm writing something that's going to have some type of kick to it, and some type of kick with meaning to it.
Sure.
When I say kick, I mean some powers. Whether it's something that's meant to influence or just make people think or make people feel something. But those are the things that I think are important to include when you're writing a story.
Getting to the heart of the matter is what I would call it. I mean, I think that unfortunately, for whatever reason, people are reluctant to share the heart of the matter. It's almost as if they're guarding it in such a way that they feel like if somebody really knew how they felt and really honestly dealt with him deep down inside, that a lot of folks would not necessarily like that or like them.
Well, I mean, it's kind of different when you're a writer. I mean, you're expected to write. You're expected to share your thoughts. And because I write a column, I'm writing my opinion. A person who's not writing a column, they're reporting what other people are thinking and feeling and saying. For me, I'm writing my opinion. Now, as individuals, members of society, people often do not share what they are thinking and feeling honestly.
Sure. Yeah.
And also as a professor of journalism at Southern Connecticut, I mean, one of the things that I've found is, and particularly I'm teaching a class called Race and the News, where we're talking about how race affects the news and how news affects race. People are discussing issues, and sometimes students are really shocked to find what other students have to say about race. And one of the things I've always said is that you never really know a person until you've had a conversation about race. As much as you think you may know someone of a different race or even your own race sometimes, you really don't know that person and what their values are and their thoughts are. Maybe not their values, but well, maybe their values.
Could be.
Until you've had that conversation. And as much as we like to think that there's been progress and things have certainly improved for the better in this country, there's still a lot of discussions that are simply not held about issues of race. And sometimes sometimes it's almost like we feel like we don't want to know. Because if we find out that someone has this belief, it changes our whole perspective on how we relate with that person.
And I think that's the most prevalent position for most people. I think that, unfortunately, for whatever reason, there's a lot of denial, by folks just in general, because it's, again, one of those tender subjects. And like I said, I commend you, for continuing to write about it, but because I sincerely believe we've got to get to the heart of the matter. I don't personally know, even with all of the history we have, why or if I could hold on to the issues that were, I think motivating, others to believe that, one race is so much different than the other, and, because of a person has a certain race, that there's a certain attributes that they in characteristics that they take on. All of that stuff, who's done the history on those kinds of things, and who's, given the labels to them, and who's defined them. I think that you can't do enough to try to really get at the truth. Well, because the truth is what's going to set us free.
I believe so, but I also think there's so many layers to where things are with regards to Americans of African descent in this country, and I do think that despite us having a black president, there is still racism in this country. But by the same token, I think that we as a people have to address issues within ourselves.
Absolutely.
I won't say are absent of racism, but we have to really address the issues. For instance, how young black males are shooting and killing each other and other people in their vicinity.
Why is drugs so prevalent in such a poor community, in a place where people can't afford even sustenance of life?
I think the main thing is, or one of the main things is education and the value of it. And
Sure.
I believe that.
But even that you got to be able to afford.
Well,
It comes from a lot of places,
Well,
but you're still having to have to pay for it.
I think, yes, you have to afford, but I'm talking about from
Elders and from others who are in the community.
well, I'm thinking of young kids, children need to be encouraged and really surrounded by books.
Oh,
I think people need to be reading. I think people need to be writing. I think there needs to be more of a focus. And we're not talking about economics here. I'm not talking about even college and affording colleges or private school or anything like that.
Right.
Because even in the darkest days of your parents, my parents, your grandparents, my grandparents.
Right.
And I know your parents were from Tennessee.
Absolutely.
Mine are from Mississippi.
Right.
And they had very little going for them in terms of economics and other things. However, their parents and their parents' parents before them knew the value of education, and they insisted that everything else that they didn't have, that kids learn how to read and write, and education is still an important key.
Absolutely.
And I think, regardless of what else is going on around us, we need to at least make sure that our kids love books. Not all this TV stuff.
Right.
Everybody having smartphones and everything, that's all well and good, but the root of everything still in terms of education is reading and writing. And if you set the foundation there, I'm not saying everything else will automatically fall in place, but I think the opportunities will be better for things falling into place with that there. So,
well, and you're a person who I've grown to know and respect because you've instilled that in your girls,
for sure.
And it shows. I know can't help but think about your daughter Aisha Harris, who was shown on at least 5 different major networks during the holidays.
Right.
The issue of whether we should have a black Santa Claus or Megyn Kelly's position, Santa Claus is white, but she handled herself magnificently, quite frankly.
Yes.
And you, it's a testament to you not just, saying those words, but actually making it a part of your practice as you raise and rear your children.
Right. I'm very proud of her. Very proud. And for me to see her address this topic, which I had addressed with her when she was a little girl, and which my parents had kind of indirectly addressed with me growing up in Illinois, the idea that they want to have a Santa that looks like us, and from even when she and Z were younger growing up, and even with my 2 younger ones now, I've always instilled things like, say, even when you color in a coloring book, color them brown, because if you don't do it, who else is going to do it? Right. That's not to say that there are not other colors out there, but so many messages and visuals are going to be white, and you understand that at least, particularly growing up, because it was a majority white society and still is, but now there's more diversity in this country. And so there should be more representation in our images and things that we see. With her, again, the education aspect. She was reading before she was going to kindergarten. It was just the love of books.
Sure.
Because I remember my parents reading books to me. When my little sister was growing up, I read books to her. So again, I'm not saying books are the magic formula, but they certainly
It's a tremendous foundation.
A tremendous foundation for it.
Without question. I can't help, but so much comes to mind. When it comes to being a black man and a father. Growing up in this environment and during this time, and your contribution that you make to your family, and it's easy for me to see where your heart is at, and I'm probably a bit biased. In the interest of full disclosure, I've known you for a long time, but it is remarkable, in my opinion, to raise young ladies, if you will, men raising young ladies, because they're always talking about women raising young men.
Right.
And so, for you to have instilled that in your daughters, Frank, man, I salute you.
Well, thank you.
I salute you, man. I want to thank you for, stopping by, man. I know you're real busy. We're glad that you're holding up the banner for us, man, and continue to write, stuff, that matters to us, man. Really,
well, thanks. I appreciate that.
It really makes a difference, man. Our community, the black community, needs to know that there are folks like you, who really, care and really doing all that they can, man, to influence the way we think, the things that we do, for our community. So,
well, thanks. I appreciate that. And I think everything has a beginning or a foundation.
Sure.
And my dad was always there for me and raised me up to say that it's important that you take care of your family. It's important that you try to make the next generation be better even than yours was. And that's what he did for me. That's what I'm instilled in my daughters, and what I'm hoping that they will continue with their children at some point when they have children. So.
An absolute pleasure, man.
Well,
hopefully this won't be the end. It'll just be the beginning for us, man. Okay. We got to have you back.
All right.
That show comes and goes, unfortunately, a little too quick,
Okay.
man.
Right.
We're signing off already,
All right.
and I know you and we're just getting started.
Okay, all right.
It has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you for tuning in to The Challenge. As always, be blessed.